I'm Carl Nagin, correspondent with Free Speech TV, and I'm very honored to have with us tonight. We're very honored to have with us Joan, who is one of the most influential voices of the progressive movement, co-founder of MoveOn.org, MomsRising.org. She's the co-author of 2 award-winning books, The Custom Fit Workplace and The Motherhood Manifesto. And in her latest avatar, she is the co-founder of a wonderful, wonderful new venue called livingroomconversations.org. And one of the mission pieces of livingroomconversations.org is to help us rediscover the lost art of listening. Joan, welcome to Free Speech TV, and
thank you very much.
I hope you'll teach me a little bit about listening as an interviewer. It'd be really helpful to me. So let me begin by asking you, as I understand it, this was begun to encourage transpartisan dialogue. What is it about where we are right now in the political, social, cultural scene that has gotten us to the point where we don't listen to each other? We don't listen to each other's voices. Can you tell us a little bit about what led you to start livingroomconversations.org?
So I was born in Berkeley.
Oh, say no more.
And I live in a very progressive town.
Yes.
I traveled in my 20s, but I came back home. And I started Move On with my husband back in 1998, midway in the Clinton impeachment scandal. And I'm actually a mediator by origin and inclination. So 6 months in, we're going, this is crazy. This is bad for the country. It's polarizing. And we wrote a 1-sentence petition. Congress must immediately censure the president and move on to pressing issues facing the nation. You could love Clinton or you could hate Clinton and agree that the best thing for the country was to censure him and move on. Well, that inclination continues in me. MomsRising is, I saw the polarization ongoing with Move On. It just, sadly, it did not Clinton got impeached, and our polarized dynamics just continued to progress. And MomsRising is actually another effort to say, okay, look, there's a huge bias against mothers and hiring, wages, and advancement. But we don't all hate mothers. This is not intentional.
Here's one thing we can agree on.
And so we had MomsRising is wonderful that way because there's a lot of agreement in that realm. But the polarization was ongoing and,
And escalating.
And escalating, yes. In 2005, I became part of a group called Reuniting America, where I was talking to people on the right very intentionally, making friends with people on the right. And my question was, why aren't you concerned about climate change? And I was able to get some really good answers, and we were able to have some conversations that were meaningful and impactful for both, all of us.
So outside of this polarization, you were able to find some common ground.
Yes. But by 2009, it became clear to me that it was less likely that you could talk about climate change. The polarization had increased. And my dream with Living Room Conversations was that we could create a grassroots foundation where people are connecting with respect and really listening to each other, because that's what I got to do. And I've seen with MomsRising and Move On, and now with Living Room Conversations, that most people, they're smart, they're caring, and you give them the opportunity to interact with each other in a caring and thoughtful way, they'll do it.
Can you give me an example? I know that one of the people that you brought into your living room was Mark Meckler, was a Tea Party person. Can you
He's a
tell us about
co-founder
that?
of Tea Party Patriots. And one of my friends said, co-founder Move On, co-founder Tea Party. They should get together.
The article that I read about that encounter was that you were wearing yoga pants and he had a cowboy hat on.
He sure did have a cowboy hat on. Well, the yoga pants were me dressing up, of course. And he had a big buckle too. But he also had a big smile, and he had lovely
big heart.
friends. And we had this wonderful conversation about crony capitalism. And in that conversation, we found some really significant common ground.
Such as?
And I have to say, part of this is it's not just the two of it. It's his two friends too. One of them worked in the extractive industries. Another was a young mother with a small business. I had my friend from MomsRising, Elisa Batista, and my friend Rodney Ferguson. So we had and he teaches GED. So we had a diverse group in the room, and yet we found we were all in complete agreement that, one, we would rather not insure the banks so that we get them out of trouble when they gamble with our money, and yet they get to keep it when they gamble and win. We thought that was not quite right. We also had a complete agreement about some very key criminal justice issues. Too many people in prisons. War on drugs is not a success. We've got to start using evidence-based practices. I mean,
extraordinary.
That's important. And I started working on criminal justice reform from that day forward. And Mark and I were on stages at various points and wrote an op-ed with Grover Norquist on the topic. And this started in 2013, early 2013.
So before Trump.
Oh, well before Trump.
And I think the election of Trump has made these kinds of conversations all the more relevant and important, vitally important.
I do not want this to become a new normal. And most people want to have good relationships with their neighbors and with their families. We just released a holiday guide because I've been talking to people, I've been in conversations about relationships, and I see tears come to people's eyes as they talk about beloved relatives and friends that they're totally estranged from because of this election. And so there are practices that we use. I mean, this is a practice.
I wanted to get to that. What is the process and what is the structure of these conversations that enables people with such, how to put it, who might otherwise have a tendency to caricature one another, to really open their hearts and listen?
It's a simple ground rules, what we as hosts and guests know instinctually, what we learned in kindergarten. Take turns, be curious, be respectful, own your part of the conversation. It's that simple. And people do it naturally. It's a natural thing to do, and then they love it. These conversations are fun. It's like, whoa. So you make new friends, and actually even with your own friends, you get a deeper view of them because the beginning of the living room conversation goes to some deeper purpose. So what is your mission statement is something pretty cool to hear from your friend too. And by the time you get to the topic you've chosen together, you have a sense that you have something in common with all these people in the room. And so you listen to them in a different way. You really listen to them.
And what have you, Joan Blades, learned from hearing and listening to people who are on a politically very different worldview, with a politically different worldview? What have been some of the core lessons of that? And then we'll get back to the process because I want to understand that better too.
I've learned vast amount, but
Sorry.
I'll take you back to climate change because that is a theme for me. If the world as we know it cannot be supporting future generations, that's a huge problem. Well, with my friend in Utah, he's a father of young children. He's a wonderful, kind, intelligent person. Climate change just wasn't one of the things he was particularly concerned about. And our relationship, first of all, it caused him to care some just because he cares about me. Because when we care about each other, we care about each other's needs. But more than that, when I was able to talk to him about the topic, I could say, even if it's only a 10% chance we're destroying the capacity of the world to sustain future generations, I find that unconscionable. as a parent, I don't let my kids play Russian roulette. And he told me that gave him enough space to think about it more. You know, so he cares more now. Now, it's not his top issue. The interesting thing he also said to me, which made me go, oh yeah, is, so this is the progressive end time story.
So we had a man of faith who is end times, can think in that paradigm, coming to see your vision of that.
Yeah, and I understand in a way I didn't realize that, you know, Jacob as a conservative, and he and conservative friends are concerned about being marginalized.
Yes.
And you know, I don't want my friend marginalized. So we care about each other. We want to find the way to have us all living in this.
Is it the choice of topic or is it the process? In other words, climate change, global warming.
We have over 60 topics.
Yeah.
And the choice of topic has to do with what people are interested in. So we have a guns and responsibility living room conversation. You can imagine there are times when that is very relevant. And it has helped me to hear what my friends that think guns should be more available are thinking. It doesn't mean I agree with them, but it means I better understand some of the obstacles. And so we can't demonize each other when we know each other. And that's incredibly important.
So is one of the I don't want to call them ground rules because I haven't experienced them and I don't know a little bit of an idea of how you structure these. Is part of it not judging the person you're speaking with?
Yes. Be curious and try to suspend judgment. Because when we judge each other, we cease to listen.
That's right.
And what I'm finding fascinating is, and why we did the Guide for Families, is people have come away from these conversations and said, you know, I had a better conversation with my father than I've had, or
Wonderful.
I've been able to talk to my nephew. The power of listening becomes apparent. The value of a good question. And when we confront someone and we say, you're a sexist, it puts up a barrier. No one wants to, most people don't want to be sexist, right? It's creating
or racist,
an issue. Exactly. But you can sometimes ask a question that gets people thinking about that, or say something about your own experience. Now, in a living room conversation, the questions are already provided, and they're personal questions, and it's about listening. In reality, we got here over many years, and a single living room conversation is a first step to opening people's hearts to each other.
And you must know this as a mediator too, that this is not something that just happens in the head. This has got to happen in the heart. There has to be heartfelt listening and emotional listening. So how does your process get us to that kind of, sometimes that's the hard place, because people's feelings are sometimes masked by their rhetoric and their intellectual positions.
Well, there are 5 rounds, and the first rounds are, why did you come? And then one that helps you talk about your mission or purpose, something that gets into that. And then there are 4 or 5 questions about the topic you've agreed to. And maybe that's about criminal justice reform or ranked choice voting, or, status and privilege. Or we just have a relationships first conversation that talks about the dynamics of relationship. But you're typically talking about your experience. So that it's not something where you need to, it's never a debate. It's about listening to everybody in the room's experience. And it's only 6 people, right? Because it's 2 friends, each invite 2 friends. And at that size, you can really hear each other. And the next round after that third round, which is the core of it, is a reflection round. Did anything change for you? Was there anything you found particularly valuable? Did you see any common ground? And then the last is anything you would like to do based upon the conversation you've had today. So it's very simple. It's
How long do
powerful.
these conversations last?
Typically 2 hours.
And you go through all these rounds
Go through
and
the 5 rounds, and everyone has time to say their piece and really listen to each other.
is there a reprise where, Joan, I'd like to revisit this question because, I've been thinking about what you said and it really hit home. Do you have any of those stories with this?
Well, it is an open source practice, so people can take it and adapt it to their needs. One of my favorite stories is about, we have Reverend Linda's leading our faith community work, because Love Thy Neighbor is a tenet of all the major faith traditions, and she has had monthly living room conversations in some of the congregations she works with.
Wonderful.
Because congregations, they're often not politically homogenous.
No.
Or they have other differences.
Coming from a Jewish background, that's kind of, de rigueur.
Yes, exactly. But this is an opportunity for people to just be with each other in an honest way. And I love the way her doing living room conversations. Like, sometimes I discover things about myself. So, sometimes someone says something and it just resonates and you go, oh, that's what I'm feeling.
Wonderful.
So it's about self-insight and connecting with others. That's the thing that is the core of it. Now, if you find common ground, that's nice. If you find next action items, that's nice. But it's a starting point. And if you have a complex issue, you need to have a relationship to be able to work together. And maybe the next thing you need is a facilitated conversation. I love those. But this is massively reproducible because it doesn't require a facilitator. All you need is to say, okay, I can work with this structure.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what are your plans for this? I hate to use the word scale, but we use that word a lot. Do you have? How do you disseminate this, and how do you this idea? Is it through your website?
The website is up.
Livingroomconversations.org.
Thank you. Yes, livingroomconversations.org, and we are actually putting up a new website that's simpler because it's just become so rich that not everybody can find things. Massive scaling is what we are hoping to do this year and next, because after this election, a lot of people have gone, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And they really have lost people they love. And if they haven't lost them, sometimes it's just damage to their friendships and family. There's a lot of pain about this.
Yes. Thank you so much for doing this beautiful work. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the project and where you're taking it? Or
a couple of things key. I get way too serious and I forget to say, this is really fun.
Oh, good.
It's like,
people laugh.
People laugh, they have a good time.
You have scones.
You have scones. People spend vast amounts of money to go on adventures.
Yes.
Here, people can have an adventure in their living room or their parish hall or their cafe, and it's life affirming.
Wonderful.
So that's what I want to say.
Okay. Some of the people who are doing this work with you on your board or your advisors, can you tell us how you?
I have a whole very diverse set of partners. You can't do something like living room conversations and not do it as a collective. So we have a dozen key people that are taking this out into the world in their own communities.
Wow. Fantastic.
And then we have dozens and dozens of organizers that are just volunteers on other levels. But this core group, we have to vet every conversation because we want the conversations to welcome everyone. And so the conservatives and the progressives and the libertarians and the, all of us need to say, okay, that language will work for my folks.
Wonderful. And you have people of faith on your board and your advisors doing this on the team. That's great. That's terrific. Thank you, Joan Blades.